Right, let's talk about the debates. There was supposed to be a debate on the west side of the state with the governor at a television station there and also a Senate, and those have been suspended because they could not get confirmation from Governor Snyder or from Terry Lynn Land. Stephen, you talked a little bit about the fact that candidates aren't seeing that debates are important for their message anymore. Why do you think that that is?
Well, I mean, I think that in every race you have one candidate who has nothing to gain by getting on a stage with the other candidate. In this cycle, it happens to be both Republicans, and I think that's notable. But it could easily be the Democrats, right? I mean, if the Democrats were in the same position, they would also be sort of balking at these debates, and it's happened before. But the bigger issue here is that voters and their interests are completely lost in this process. The campaigns see debates as part of their self-interest and their campaign, as opposed to a public service. And so, if you're Rick Snyder and you feel like getting on stage with Mark Schauer gives him legitimacy that he can't get on his own, then you're gonna hem and haw and delay to run the clock out, so to speak, before debates get scheduled. If you're Terry Lynn Land and you don't do very well in public, you're sort of stammering and got a little bit of stage fright, you maybe think you don't have very much to gain by getting on a stage with Gary Peters, who's a little more polished in that forum. So,
and the other thing too is the debates themselves have become, in a lot of incidents, just another gotcha game. Everybody's looking for that
they don't have to
one
be,
moment to pounce. They don't have to be, but that's what they become. And perhaps it's time to rethink how debates are done. I mean, we've got new technologies out here, different ways to reach voters. Maybe there are virtual debates. Maybe there are better places than the candidate's own website to go and get objective information about these candidates to help voters sort through the noise, so that they're not, that the debates don't just become an extension of these negative campaign ads, where instead of people standing up there and talking about their positions, they're trying to score points and reiterate the points.
But let's go back.
The points of their campaign.
But let's go back.
Advertising.
Let's go back 4 years ago, when Rick Snyder was just a candidate for the governorship, and Verge Bernero was the opponent. We had a debate here, the only debate between the two of them, that I had real problems with the way it was structured and the rules that both campaigns tried to put on it.
But don't you think that's part of the problem, is how it's become so sanitized and so reoriented?
In the end, I think voters got a very.
Well,
you could watch that. That's right.
Well, hang on, pat ourselves on the back for just one moment.
No, but I mean, I think voters could have watched that and gotten a very clear picture of who those two candidates were and what their positions were.
But and a lot of that went to the fact that the candidates conducted themselves.
They absolutely did.
And in a very respectful fashion, and they were interested in getting their ideas out.
Yeah.
But how many debates have you seen where that becomes simply an extension of the campaign advertising?
That's the fault of the
where
moderator,
the candidates, sometimes, but where the candidates are simply trying to get their soundbite in.
Well, I think that that's part of campaigning, and that's part of running for public office.
It is.
And in this world that everyone now is trying to get their message across, regardless of the question that's been asked them, and you guys know that better than anyone. So
and that's what makes debates probably less useful than they were at a previous
So let me
time.
ask you this. So, all right, I'm going to pull out the whiteboard here and start throwing things out here. What should we be seeing? If you're talking about something that we should be doing that's more high tech, involving citizenry in a different way, I mean, let's start the brainstorming right here.
Again, there ought to be a series of debates that's scheduled by some independent of the campaign's body that manages the discourse for these things. And again, if all of the media outlets in the state cooperated in that process, I don't think the candidates would ever be in a position to be able to say, I won't do that.
Would you say that there's obviously ego of the candidates, but there's ego of the television stations and newspaper outlets as well, or who want to have the debate? Is that part of the problem?
We made an effort to try to get something like this together. What was that, 2 years ago? It didn't work. It snagged on some of the things you're talking about.
Well, it was our fault, not the candidate's fault.
It was not the candidate's fault. It was media outlets where we couldn't convince enough people that there was a public service value in all of us working together to do this. That
So what if you take a non-media entity, say like the political leadership program at MSU,
Yeah.
and said you're now
Okay.
the de facto debate commission, set it up.
Yeah.
You pick.
that may be a better route.
But you pick the location, you pick the stations, you pick the moderators, and then the candidates are expected to come. But you've got all this bargaining going on, makes it almost, it's what happened in Grand Rapids.
Well, and that's
Well, and
the
you could
thing.
rotate. You could
almost
rotate it fairly
impossible.
as well. You could
could.
say every 2 years or
And
some station gets this or
The
that.
problem with the process now is that the candidates manipulate media outlets, right? I mean, everybody wants the exclusive debate, and candidates know that, so they sort of play around and say, well, we'll give it to you if we get X, Y, or Z from you. I mean, it's a horrible process, and I've said this before, but Indiana, which is just next door, has a process that seems to work wonderfully. They have not had a statewide campaign without a debate since 2007 with this independent commission they have, and they have had multiple debates in places around the state for every race. It's not that hard, but holding together the coalition that does that is the key.
And then
All right.
the next challenge is getting voters to actually watch them.
To watch them.
To watch them and be engaged. All right, we're going to have to leave it there on elections, but we've got a good, a good 2 months
talking
to
about
go.
this
We'll be
all the
talking
time.
about it again. That is going to do it for My Week. Thanks, Nolan and Stephen, and thank you for watching. Check us out on Facebook and Twitter, and as always, myweek.org. For coverage of the election this year, also check out myvote.org for stories and candidate interviews. I'm Christy McDonald. Have a great weekend. We will see you next week. Take care.
Recently, Michigan's economy has begun to turn around. Michigan's gained over 250,000 new jobs. We've paid off $20 billion in long-term debt. And our population is increasing for the first time in a decade. But to make Michigan a top 10 state, there's still plenty of work to be done. Step up and help put Michigan on top. Learn what you can do at MichiganTurnaroundPlan.com.
Funding is also provided by Delta,